Fairy tales have always intrigued me. Divine love stories like fairy tales cause people to marvel and wonder at how good God really is.
Like some eternal clockwork, there comes a time when everything divine just falls in line. The Bible calls it kairos. I call it a journey through Wonderland.
After our heartbreak at age 18, I whispered my first prayer, asking for the girl God wanted for me. I figured when searching out my own girl and God approved, love would play out like the movies. Not so. Living in Chicago in the 80s, I was exposed to a teaching on God-ordained love that made my head spin.
I moved to Illinois in the 80s, and my love life was non-existent. But by the 90s, my mom had asked God to give me a husband, and in turn, he gave her understanding. There will be a man who hears my voice. He encouraged her to buy me a bouquet of silk violets to remind me of what he had promised.
It became embarrassing and comical how my attempts at romance didn't work. Did I smell bad? Had I grown a third eye? Full of frustration, I unloaded on God, foul words and all. He revealed, "You're trying to make happen what I actually want to give you. I have chosen your wife, and I will bring her to you." This was a final turning point for me.
Christmas, 1995. Cancer was trying to stake a claim on my mom's life. It was a holiday tradition for my dad to buy my mom a piece of fine jewelry. She'd circled a couple of pieces she liked in a catalog. This year she let me pick for her, a large purple amethyst pendant. After all, shades of violet had become my favorite color. 19 days into the new year, her gift, it became my inheritance.
God was moving me to cease my self-efforts to attain love. I felt like an outsider, a circus freak. Yet an intense desire stirred to know how God always meant this romance thing to really work. Digging through the Bible, I discovered patterns and principles operating in the lives of those he specifically matched.
Wondering when love would come for me, one night I dreamed I was at a college frat house, compelled that I would find my husband there. After an empty search of the first 2 floors, I saw a staircase leading to an attic. I knew that I knew he must be there. I opened the door. The room was tranquil. Felt like home. I glanced to my left and I saw him, my husband, long-haired, asleep in a chair with a Bible open across his lap. I heard God say, "Like you, I have him hidden in Christ too." I glanced to the right and saw a bed. I recalled the story of Ruth. Instinctively, I knew to lay at the foot of the bed until he awakened. I awoke from that dream with an unwavering confidence my wedding was on the calendar. My longing for love turned into an assurance for the first time.
I caught an interview with an older lady about real matches made in heaven. The lady spoke how she chose to trust God alone for her love life. She had lived the life I was now in. I wasn't mad after all. Instantly, she became a hero to me. Her name, Elizabeth Elliot.
My new assurance gave me a new freedom to give my singleness to God. I came across a book called Passion and Purity by Elizabeth Elliot. I remember being so astounded by her devotion to return to God all he gave her, even her affections for the man she knew she was destined to marry. All I could think was, who does that? I found myself doing what she did more and more. I trusted Christ for everything my single heart needed and desired. The beautiful satisfaction of being his alone was winning. Frequently, I casually glanced at the clock when it was reading 3:33. It was weird how exacting the timing was, and I learned it was God inviting me to call upon him. He promised to tell me of love's secrets in much the same way he did for Jeremiah in the 3rd verse of his 33rd chapter. This mysterious invitation continued daily for years.
God taught me of his romantic world. I began to fill notebooks with these truths that turned into books opening opportunities to teach others. It was then that I realized that my journey wasn't just for me, but for the benefit of others. I had been a musician for years and clearly sensed God wanted me to create a unique musical experience to tell his story of redemption and divine romantic matches. The band Midnight Valentine was born.
Later, I was writing a lot about what I had been learning. I also helped plan a cool church downtown. On my birthday, God had told me to join everyone for Mexican. After service, my friend Jeff asked if I was heading out with everyone. I said, yeah, save me a seat. He agreed, adding, we'll be sitting with that motley crew over there. and pointed to a group of rocker dudes hanging out at the back of the church.
There was a church that gathered on Sunday nights open to unconventional creative expressions. My bassist and I met with the pastor over Mexican to share what Midnight Valentine was all about. I passed a copy of my book to him and he gave it to this girl named Kim, saying she'd be into this. Kim? Who is that?
I read Gary's book. It spooked me how parallel our convictions were. Over the next few months, we had become good friends. Well, out of nowhere, during work one day, I felt God's presence real strong and asked him what was on his heart. He brought Gary to mind, asking me if I would take him as, well, my husband. Well, I said no. I'd seen so many valuable qualities in him as a man, but I did not see a capacity in him to want or cherish me. God asked me a second time, would you take him for what you have come to know so far? Well, I reconsidered all that I deeply admired in him. Overwhelmed, I could not resist his proposal. I said yes. 1 month later, Gary took me for pizza and said no.
There had been some secondhand talk that Kim thought we were to be married. What? I was having none of that nonsense. I cared for Kim as my friend and sister, but for me, two things were missing: a spark and the fact that God had said nothing of the romantic to me. Faith for me was void. End of story.
A bit bewildered, I wasn't sure I should continue to be friends with Gary. Then he invited me to go to a concert. I asked Jesus if I should go, or even continue to be his friend. Well, out of nowhere, a friend contacted me. He said I had come to mind, and he gave me encouragement, making me to know that God was calling me further into friendship with Gary. That number 33, well, it continued to show up in the most unsuspecting places.
I put all that Kavanaugh rubbish behind me, and I was back to business as usual. I really did enjoy hanging with Kim. She was always a riot, intelligent and godly. But one thing stuck in my thinking: she's not going away. It's not that I wanted her to go away, but seriously, she's not going away.
I was praying for one of Gary's band members when God reminded me of something he said years back. Nashville matters. Within days, I had understanding that God wanted to move me and my purpose to Nashville. I shared this with Gary, and within 24 hours, he was understanding the same thing for himself and his band. Curiouser and curiouser, I now wondered, what was God up to?
Several of us involved in Midnight Valentine began to see doors in Illinois closing. We assumed a move to Nashville would be just around the corner, but why the continued wait? I discerned that everything was on hold until my wife was with me. I had to marry soon.
God encouraged me. I wasn't going to Nashville without my husband. He urged me to dig out my mother's wedding set, which was missing its center diamond. He told me my husband's purpose, like that center diamond, is destined to fit inside the settings of my own purpose, like a perfect match. About this time, I was also catching the clock changing from 3:33 to 3:34 in the split second. He said he was changing the subject. My mysterious faith was about to see a fulfillment.
Something was happening deep inside me in relation to Kim. I was thinking about her and didn't want to. I wanted to be where she was and tried not to. Perplexed, I told the demons to go away. Instead, a chemistry began to spark. Clearly, more warfare was needed. Or was it? Could this be God? Nah, I determined to ignore this foolishness. Kim and I went to see the Legends of Sunset Strip, Rat. If you don't know who Rat is, you should. Shame on you. People packed in all around us. At some point, someone elbowed me in the ribs and I turned around. There was Kim, a sweet smile looking up at me. I'd seen her smile 1,000 times before, but this time I saw someone I'd never seen before. A veil that had covered her lifted. Jesus whispered, "She's your wife." Immediately, I loved her.
At the concert, I had an idea to try to snap a picture of the lead singer within the same frame as Gary's profile. I held the camera in place behind Gary for several seconds for the performer to walk into the frame. I got it. I had every intention to relentlessly tease Gary. I got his picture with Stephen Piercy.
A couple of days later, we sat on a park bench, people watching. An elderly man with a hint of Budweiser on his breath asked to sit with us and began to talk about how good God is. He leaned forward and said to me, "Sir, I must tell you, your wife is splendid. Kim giggled. I told him, well, we're just friends. I felt a little dirty because I kind of lied. The next morning, Kim sent me the picture she shot of Rat with my big head. Looking at that photograph, God made it clear. You've spent years of waiting. Why wait any longer? Do what you know to do. She met me that afternoon. I took her to a local park and we had small talk about stupid squirrels and tennis. When the squirrels ran away, that exhausted the small talk. Then I told her, Jesus messed me up, and now I'm going to mess you up. You're the one, Kim. Let's get married.
When Gary finished telling me his secrets from the last 4 days, I in turn shared my secrets from the last 4 years.
So overwhelming. Thinking I was prepared, it still swept me away. We sat stunned, not paying any attention to the time. I recalled Kim's experience with the numbers 333 changing to 334, where God encouraged her he was changing the subject. When we traced back to our time in the park, we discovered the proposal happened precisely at 3:34 in the afternoon.
Our own love story continued to stun us even after the proposal. Later that week, I told Gary the story of my mom's amethyst, how her faith in God's words, that there would be a man who hears his voice, would marry me. Gary stopped me mid-sentence and said,
Kim, that's my birthstone.
Feels like I've waited for 1,000 years. I would joke at times that I must have fallen down the proverbial rabbit hole, following Jesus into the strange mystery of faith, promising me love. I too thought maybe I'd gone mad, but I've learned the secret. All the best people usually are. To know this kind of love, well, I had to wait for 1,000 more.